Right now, a silent crisis is unfolding across Europe, transforming the continent's summer into a high-stakes economic nightmare. As temperatures shatter historical records and breach a blistering 40 degrees Celsius from Madrid to Berlin, hundreds of millions of people are simultaneously turning on air conditioning units and cooling systems to survive the oppressive heat. Under normal economic principles, a sudden spike in demand should trigger a corresponding increase in supply, with Europe's massive industrial infrastructure ramping up energy production to power the continent. However, extreme heat introduces a dangerous macroeconomic paradox where the hotter the environment gets, the less efficient and capable our primary systems become. This structural breakdown is most visible in the energy sector, specifically within France, a nation that historically serves as the bedrock of Europe's clean electricity grid through its sprawling network of nuclear reactors. These nuclear power plants require massive volumes of cool river water to safely regulate reactor temperatures and generate electricity. But as the rivers themselves warm up to unprecedented levels, plant operators are legally and technically forced to throttle their power output or shut down operations entirely to prevent environmental devastation and catastrophic equipment meltdowns. This creates a terrifying reality where grid demand surges to historic highs at the exact moment generation capacity plummets, causing electricity prices to spike violently across interconnected European markets. When the energy grid trembles, the financial shockwaves tear through every sector of the European economy. Heavy industries, factories, and manufacturing plants, already struggling with volatile global markets, suddenly find themselves facing astronomical electricity bills, forcing many to temporarily halt production lines. This sudden drop in industrial output threatens to trigger a widespread summer recession, proving that the modern economy cannot function when its literal power source is throttled by the weather. Yet, the energy grid is only the first domino to fall in a cascading sequence of structural failures. Beyond the power plants, Europe's physical infrastructure is undergoing a literal meltdown because it was engineered for a completely different climate reality. For centuries, European cities, roads, and rail networks were designed to absorb and retain heat to withstand harsh, freezing winters, not to deflect extreme tropical temperatures. Today, that design philosophy has become a major liability. Across the continent, asphalt roads are softening and melting under the intense solar radiation, disrupting local logistics and heavy freight transport. More alarmingly, thousands of miles of steel railway tracks are physically absorbing the heat, expanding beyond their engineering limits, and buckling into hazardous, warped configurations. This forces rail networks to drastically reduce train speeds or cancel cargo and passenger services altogether to prevent catastrophic derailments. At the same time, overhead high-voltage power lines are sagging as the heat decreases their electrical conductivity and physical tension, threatening localized blackouts and halting electrified transit systems. Reconstructing an entire continent's transport and logistics infrastructure to withstand these new temperature baselines will require trillions of euros in capital expenditure, an investment that debt-burdened European governments simply cannot afford without triggering further economic instability. As the physical environment warps, human capital faces an equally devastating blow through a phenomenon economists call the summer productivity void. Human biology possesses strict thermal limits, and extensive macroeconomic studies have identified a critical threshold at 30 degrees Celsius. Once local temperatures cross this mark, human labor productivity drops by roughly 3% for every single additional degree the temperature rises. For outdoor sectors like construction, agriculture, and logistics, as well as indoor manufacturing facilities lacking heavy industrial cooling, working in 40-degree heat becomes not just inefficient, but physically impossible. Workers suffer from heat exhaustion, cognitive fatigue, and increased injury rates, forcing businesses to shorten working hours or halt operations during peak daylight hours. When millions of workers across major economies like Germany, France, Italy, and Spain lose hours of peak efficiency every day for weeks at a time, billions of euros in economic output simply vanish from the gross domestic product. This invisible drain on productivity acts as a massive drag on economic growth, stifling the continent's ability to recover from existing financial pressures. Simultaneously, the agricultural sector is experiencing a catastrophic supply chain shock that promises to drive food inflation to dangerous new heights. Extreme heat waves are rapidly depleting soil moisture across Europe's primary agricultural belts, causing widespread crop failures for essential staples like wheat, corn, and olives. Rivers that farmers rely on for vital irrigation are drying up, forcing local authorities to implement strict water rationing that starves crops during their critical growth phases. The crisis is compounded by the fact that these drying inland waterways are also Europe's primary commercial shipping lanes. Major rivers like the Rhine, which serves as an industrial superhighway, moving coal, oil, chemicals, and manufactured goods through the heart of Europe, are experiencing dangerously low water levels. Cargo barges are forced to reduce their loads by over 70% just to avoid running aground in the shallow waters, meaning it now takes 4 or 5 ships to transport what a single vessel could previously carry. This logistical bottleneck drives up shipping costs exponentially, delays the delivery of raw materials to factories, and ensures that the prices of everyday goods at the supermarket remain painfully high for consumers. All of these intersecting crises ultimately converge on the financial sector, triggering a quiet panic among major banks and insurance corporations. The traditional insurance industry relies heavily on predictable historical climate data to calculate risk and price their policies accurately. However, the escalating frequency and severity of these summer heat waves, along with the accompanying wildfires and agricultural losses, have rendered old financial models completely obsolete. Insurance giants are now facing an unsustainable surge in multi-billion euro climate claims year after year. To protect their own survival, these companies are quietly raising premiums to exorbitant levels or entirely withdrawing coverage from high-risk regions across southern Europe. This creates a highly dangerous economic domino effect. When property, crops, and infrastructure become uninsurable, commercial banks refuse to issue loans or mortgages for them. This freezes real estate markets, devalues commercial land, and leaves businesses unable to secure the capital needed for expansion, threatening to destabilize the broader European banking system. What began as a seasonal weather story has officially evolved into a permanent, structural threat to European wealth and stability. The economic melting of Europe is not a distant future scenario. It is a systemic failure happening in real time, exposed by a fragile energy grid, an obsolete infrastructure layout, a declining labor force capacity, and an overstressed financial system.